So, Adrian, thank you for joining us today. For many years, you've been in technology leadership. I think we've known you for, well, I don't know, a long time now, 8, 9, 10 years. I think our paths first crossed. You were leading the mobile revolution when we first met, I seem to remember. And then, during that time, you've overseen the transition to cloud, and now here you are, the emergence of AI. Can you tell us a little bit about your story, maybe, and sort of what sort of led you to here today?
Okay. Yes, indeed. When we first met, I was desperately trying to push the app in confused.com. And after some battles, of course, like in any new innovation, of course, it's been there, and it's quite a successful one right now. At least this is what I hear. But yeah, beyond that, fundamentally, right now, I am the founder and CEO of ProveIt. It's a company focusing on, for now at least, the Romanians in the UK. Fundamentally, we want to have a broader vision and help functionally literate people. So fundamentally, people that they know how to read, they don't really understand what they read. Unfortunately, there are 8 to 10 million in the UK. And a lot of these users, then they lose a lot of money because they don't know how to properly defend their rights with the companies. So when I say defend the rights, it's as simple as raising a complaint. Most of those users, they never raised a complaint in their life. So yeah, we started with the Romanian population because originally I'm from Romania. I came here in the 2013. I came for an MBA, and that allowed me to transition to Admiral. And in Admiral, I spent 8 years, kind of half and half, 3 years as trying to launch new products in Admiral Insurance, and then 5 years in confused.com leading, and I was the one setting the labs team there, where in the labs we were trying to test new innovations. And I think that one of the key takeaways from there was to kind of push for the innovations that the users actually want, and that is always the trickiness.
Obviously, I think head of labs was your illustrious title. Confused. So that's put you at the forefront quite early on in terms of exploring new ideas and getting involved with new technology. But I'd imagine working in a large organization, like Admiral, like Confused, like kind of big financial services organizations, is very different in the sense of what it's like to kind of be involved in a startup and run your own show. Kind of what was that transition like? How did that work out for you?
The transition was not exactly an easy one, if you want, in terms of course, in a large organization, and especially trying to push new things in general, new technology, new innovation, something like this. It is hard, and it is hard probably for the good reasons, because a large organization will always ask you the tough questions like the so what. Okay, understands that whatever technology you want to build, it's out there, but okay, so what? Walk me through how that would benefit our users, how that would translate into financial results, and make sure that we don't break things with the regulator, because in a financial industry, the number one KPI is let's make sure that everything that we build there, it's sound from the regulatory perspective. Now, that probably, again, spending time in a large organization, and because you have a mechanism there and you have people and senior leaders asking you the tough questions. Now, in running my own gig, fundamentally I could do whatever I wanted. And I think that the lessons from confused.com, the lessons from Admiral and previously, that helped me to make sure that I am not spending 2 years building something that nobody will use. Initially, when I started, I wanted to build sort of a credit scoring system for newcomers in the UK, because I lived through that pain. When you are a newcomer to the UK, you cannot rent an apartment. Forget about all the other things like getting a credit card, but you have troubles to actually rent an apartment because they cannot verify your identity. They want whatever 2-3 years worth of address. I say, yeah, I can give you the address in Romania, but I just came to the UK, and you get lots of problems. And I say, okay, I think that I've lived through that and I validated the problems from the user perspective. But then, of course, I had two options, either building the technology for 3, 6, 9 months, whatever, and then try to talk to companies and getting them to adopt the technology. But I've taken the other approach where I just built a nice PowerPoint, 10 slides explaining what I want to build and try to understand if the companies actually do care about that. And after roughly 200 discussions, I realized that pretty much nobody cares about that problem in the company world. I spent 6 months learning the hard way that my initial assumption that actually this is a big enough problem for me to solve. I said, no, sorry, it might be a very good and very big problem for the users, but the ones that actually need to adopt the whole technology, aka the companies, didn't find it such a big problem.
So initially you approached it from the company perspective. So you were sort of going to the organizations that maybe were causing the problem or were making it difficult for your customers to engage with them to see if they could change the way they operated. But you found that they would basically not, they weren't going to do that. Why would they bother? So then you changed tact and you sort of then spoke to the users directly. That's sort of how you could facilitate from that end.
Yes, that helped us to pivot and to say, okay, that's a two-side equation, and if one of the two sides actually don't care about the problem, you don't have a problem. That's it. So I purely focused on consumers, and probably in November 2020, almost 2 years ago, I've started actually having lots of conversations with the users and trying to understand their problems. And this is one of the things that push me completely out of the comfort zone, where fundamentally ProveIt, it's a bootstrap company, so we don't have budgets for marketing or anything. And I needed to somehow reach out to those users. And I was lucky enough back then to meet somebody who, the guy was very good in TikTok.
I just thought it was people dancing. Is that not what it is?
It's people doing lots of things, including dancing, of course. But yeah, it's one of those channels where first I found it easy to actually reach audience organically. So I started again in November 2020. And it was easy for me to talk about various aspects of the financial life in the UK and try to see if actually I can reach out an audience organically. That was my main question. And to my surprise, after 2 or 3 clips where I was completely rubbish, I found that actually one of my clips reached out to like 200,000 views organically. And suddenly, after 2 or 3 months, I realized that I'm becoming sort of a mini Martin Lewis for the Romanians in the UK.
Brilliant.
And that kind of took off a little bit in terms of, okay, right now it feels like we solved the problem, which is, okay, how do we get to these users? And I ended up having lots of conversations, like 200-300 conversations with random Romanians in the UK, asking them, okay, what financial problem you have? Maybe I can help. And this is how I start to really understand not the problem if you wanted the first layer of the problem, but actually getting a little bit deeper. And yes, became quite clear that they don't know exactly how to fight the companies. Whenever they have a problem with a company, their way of dealing with it is to call the person that they knew inside that company. So for example, if they bought a car, they're just calling that person, physical person, because they had the number and they're calling the person trying to deal with the problem. And if that person says, oh, sorry, we cannot help, that's it. They kind of say, okay, it is what it is. And I've realized, and this is where I started, okay, asking more questions. Okay. And to my surprise, virtually nobody actually wrote an email or had a proper complaint to the company. And that was probably one of the key insights. I need to solve that problem, that bit, because if I am to actually help them, it's two-sided problem there. On one side, of course, they don't know how to do it and they don't know the technology. But this is where I dug a little bit deeper. I really understood that the key problem probably is they don't believe. They don't believe that by raising a complaint, something good can happen. And looking backwards, of course, it's easier than to justify. And it's normal because of most of the Eastern European countries, they lived in a communist era. And in communist era, complaining, there are not a lot of success stories when you are complaining about something and, something good will come out of that process. So this is why, again, circling and coming back, I think that if you under the challenge that I had in ProveIt and in launching ProveIt was trying to get to the nitty-gritty details of the problem, trying to understand not only, okay, this is a problem and yes, you are losing money because you are not complaining, but get a lot deeper than that, trying to really understand why are you not complaining? What exactly stops you complaining? And once I've realized that, I said, okay, let us coach you. And
It's fascinating. It's a really interesting journey because it sounds like you started by essentially approaching the financial services companies with an opportunity for them to improve their customer service, to kind of work more effectively with a subset of their client base, but they didn't really see a lot of value in that. And so instead, you kind of flipped it on its head and you've gone to the customers themselves and you're attempting to improve their access to the financial services. So gone the other way around. You're almost given the companies a reason to care because they could just ignore them before, I suppose. So that kind of level of empowerment is brilliant. Is that what's driving you? Is it you're looking to empower your customers, as opposed to maybe just improving their journey through a consumer experience?
I think that you touched it very well in terms of if you under the whole ethos and everything that we do. Of course, we provide the service. The user on the back of the service will get some money and will be better financially, or at least they don't lose money because this is our mantra. And I'm cautious that there are other companies in the market again doing that. But I think that what sets us apart is this drive for the user to actually learn from that process and of course, empower the user during that relation because fundamentally they are feeling hopeless. They came to us and says, okay, I have this problem or whatever is the problem with the company. I don't know what to do. So it's that sense of, okay, I don't have any power. So therefore I'm empowering them in that relation. But even beyond that, by going through the process and seeing the process and learning from that process, at least they would believe next time when they would have a problem with the company, they would believe, you know what? I've seen it 2 years ago and ProveIt actually helped me doing this. Let me see, maybe I can do the same thing.
I mean, it sounds like you spent a significant amount of time really sharpening your understanding of what the problem actually is. So obviously you're a technology guy and you've been working in technology for a long time. The temptation, it sounds like maybe this is where you started, but the temptation would be to jump straight to your understanding of the problem and deliver a solution. So focus on how the technology could change it. But now that you've you've become a marketing guru, you're a financial educator, you're the mini Martin Lewis, and you've now got an army of supporters that are hanging off your every word. But you've ended up from a technology standpoint, certainly in the early days, of a very manual process, I suppose, to kind of try and help solve that problem in the simplest way possible. Are you able to kind of talk through a little bit about how that process started? So kind of when you first uncovered the problem and you want to be able to facilitate that, how did you take those early steps to kind of help your customers along?
Yes, and you touched it very well. Probably right now, if I'm doing an X-ray of ProveIt, thinking of it with my tech hat, I would say, oh, but this is not actually whatever fantastic technology there. And this is fundamentally because I mentioned again, late 2023, I start becoming this Martin Lewis, whatever, mini Martin. And then beginning of 2024, the car finance mis-selling scandal took off. okay, all over the news in January that, okay, if you had this problem, lots of people affected or potentially affected. I already set some things in motion. I already had this community and understanding that, okay, the complaining process for them is completely out of the question. But then seeing a very tangible result, like, you know what, if you had a car on finance, you might be owed some money. To get that money, it's a simple complaint process. I say, okay, let me marry the two. I said, probably it's a no-brainer for our users to say, okay, look, if you want, of course, you can self-serve and you can do it yourself. Or if you want, you can go to claims management companies, but you have these problems. Or we have the third option, which is our new service, where we are guiding you through the process, with what to do step by step, but it's a fully transparent process. And this is where fundamentally we struggle to keep our heads above the water and getting new customers through the door and deliver the whole service in a manual way. That's the reality. In behind the scene, yes, we have some automation, we have some things, but from the human perspective, I mean, from our users' perspective, it's one-to-one delivered. It's not self-serve. We are the ones actually do and instructing them what to do. Again, I think that probably for the first time in my life, I was in a situation where I had a problem in mind and I kind of knew that technology can be built to solve that problem. But the users took us in a completely different direction where we learned that, for example, if we put whatever things on our website, they will always prefer to talk with somebody on the phone. Now, that, of course, created us some problems in terms of, yeah, we needed a call center, we needed to staff the call center, we need to create offline channels. Initially, again, in March 2024, when we launched this, I wanted to build something online for them to self-serve and, okay, go through here, even the buying process. Most of our users, unfortunately, bought a service only after they had a discussion with one of our agents on the phone. They need the conversation with a human being to ask their questions, to reassure them that actually, okay, this is a legit service and so on. No matter what assumptions I had in mind in March when we launched it last year regarding the technology to help us, they were relatively very fast kind of overturned by our users. We say, no, I want this, and that. I want to talk to you on the phone. We embraced this. Towards the mid next year, mid last year, we embraced this. As you know, this is our target audience. By the end of the day, we need to serve these users. They have these behaviors. For sure, changing their behaviors, it's the hardest thing in the world. We cannot do that. Let's try ourselves to build the technology behind the scene and processes and everything that we need to actually help them the ways that they want to be helped. And of course, that meant initially throw a lot of people to the problems and try to do a lot of manual things. And we started building some automations behind the scene for us to, alleviate the pain there.
I mean, it sounds like you've done everything the right way, really. I mean, we often will come across sometimes startup founders, but even in large organizations, people that want to build incredible, complex, large systems designed for scale when they have no idea if anyone's actually going to use it yet. We have to say, you're not Facebook. You don't need 300 million users a day. Don't worry about that. The plan should always be to build it so it doesn't scale.
It's that classic Y Combinator thing, isn't it? Where they always say, just stop, go and talk to users. And it sounds like that was where you found yourself.
You need to get a lot into the details. Why on earth actually, what segment of population cannot solve that problem? And to the extent also for us, and I don't know right now, I mean, I know very clear that for Romanians in the UK, this is a problem and this is why they cannot solve it. And this is why our service is better.
So, yeah, we've covered some ground already. So you're a technology guy. You've come across a problem. You've fallen in love with your problem and your customer and your user. You've created what is fundamentally a non-technology solution, And you've got an issue now that you've got too many customers you don't know what to do with. You've created this scale issue, and now you're looking once again at kind of how technology can help address that landscape where you've got some basic infrastructure, well identified and articulated problem, and a whole bunch of users that want to engage with it and use that service. What do you see now as the opportunity that technology can bring to kind of address the situation that you find yourself in? How can technology now?
I think that if you want the vision there, because what we've seen is that if we take users through this journey and we are telling them what to do and how to do, that works. By and large, that works for them. We get very positive reviews. They are very happy with our service. They are very happy with the transparency there and everything. The concept of virtual personal assistant for sure has been there for a lot of time. Like probably I know it for like 15 years. A digital personal assistant where you have this tech that guide you through the process. Says, okay, I have this problem, guide me through the process. And that this technology is actually guiding you through that process, sometimes accessing some of your accounts, of course, with your, okay, when I say some of your accounts, your email account, for example, trying to filter only the emails that actually comes from that company. Says, okay, I want my my digital PA to help me with or dealing with that company. So therefore, the PA will link to my email account and will get only the emails for that company. Will draft the emails if you want to put it there. I just need send. That is to give you an example. So that is the vision. And this is where, yes, we've started with something that is non-scalable. It is delivered in a way that is good for the users and they love it. It's very hard for us to deliver, but that is good again, that is scalable. And we are trying to build the scalability by using the technology to provide a very similar service. From the user perspective, it needs to be very similar. It needs to be exactly the same service. But if we can employ the technology to actually help us 80, 90%, 100% of the way, who knows? We'll see. But that is the vision there. If you know, the digital PAs that can do this, and the digital PA is not only reactive in terms of the user telling them, you know what, I want your help with this, but proactive also telling, hey, do you know if you've been in this or you are in this situation, you might be entitled to that. And that I think is the other element of it where we are the one raising awareness. And to give you an example right now, and we can discuss about that as a service, what we are building right now, it's a money clinic. So yes, we have two services. One, of course, for the car finance. The other is find your private pension. But we wanted to expand this and we want to build sort of a certified individual checks for people not to lose money. It says, you know what, if you are in this particular situation, you might be entitled to that money. So kind of the digital PA needs to be both ways. It needs to be, of course, reactive, but also proactive. We started with the simple building blocks, and I mentioned that we have quite a lot of automation, and it's automation, those kind of very simple things in terms of Google Sheets and in terms of Zapier, and in terms of integrating with Gmail. So we have 50, 60 templates emails. And right now we have the technologies, you know what, these emails that a human being actually sent, it's template 25. And then we try to put those together and say, okay, can we actually deliver a more end-to-end result where an email comes in, something that the technology will understand exactly what this email about, will pick up a template, will draft it and will put it in the draft section for a user to actually send it from there. And this is like the first step. And this comes to the Dootrix lab where we are part of the program. That is one of the key concepts that we want to validate.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So you mentioned the Dootrix Agentic Incubator Labs there, and it sounds so. Primarily, what you're trying to do with that is to prove that intelligent automation layer. You know, so to make sure that the right information goes to the right people at the right time, which normally would be your back office team would be putting templates together and figuring out what's appropriate, which customer, and applying it to which service. We're looking at trying how can we use agents and automation to kind of do that with AI instead, so that can scale without scaling the size of your back office team.
I think that the technology it is there, and of course we need to prove that it works, and it has their own challenges because again we are addressing the Romanian population in the UK, and that is one of the challenge. Then of course some emails are in some of them half in Romanian, half in English, and so on. So yeah, there are the in and outs of it, but I think that if we can prove that, then that'd be amazing.
It's a fascinating use case actually, because it plays really well into what a lot of these agents are good at. So you mentioned there that the emails are kind of half in English and half in Romanian. You mentioned that you've got this concept of a digital PA. One of the most obvious use cases for agentic systems is that personal assistant, and you've identified a use case there. We've looked at stuff in the labs around personal training assistants for fitness, and there are other agentic patterns as well, but this kind of personal advisor one comes up a lot. So ProveIt needs a personal advisor, but it's a personal advisor that's also multilingual, which is another thing that LLMs happen to do really well, and it has to deal with sentiment and understand intent within written language, which is the emails, which is another thing that agents are really good at. So it's a fascinating kind of problem area to be working in, and one that I think we have a lot of high hopes for.
Indeed, and for sure it's fascinating, and I'm using probably ChatGPT daily right now for various things, and I've seen it actually the technology there working. I mean, the other day I was trying to understand the legal matter a little bit better. So, okay, should I go to a lawyer or actually? And I dug and I started with ChatGPT, and after, of course, a number of iteration and guiding it through the right questions, I think that I've got a much more complete answer in a materially shorter time frame and with almost zero cost than I would have gotten from a lawyer. And for the purpose there, it's good enough. And this is again coming back to prove it. What we do is not rocket science. What we do, we are not lawyers. We are just a company that we know the financial services, if you want the complaints process and all the other the FOS and FCA and all the regulations there. So it's fundamentally very, process driven, process oriented. And when you put on top of the process driven, the capabilities of agentic AI, where they understand the concept, they understand the context, they are able to actually pull and use templates or not use templates if that email actually is not willing. And of course, probably the integration also with our database and being able to pull up a case file there and really understand where is this person in their journey, that gives us very high expectations. We should be able to prove something there quite soon.
One of the emails was essentially complaining they were confused because they'd had two emails back, and I didn't understand why they had two emails back that were exactly the same. And so obviously the agent goes off and it looks at the templates and they've got this kind of problem, and look through the templates and I don't have a solution. But rather than just coming back and saying I don't have a solution, it says, I think what the customer's actually done is they've got two complaints, and these two complaints are probably being dealt with by two separate parties and two separate processes, and so they will get two emails. And therefore, what they should do is they should reply to each of those emails separately. And that was something that the agent figured out without any kind of intervention from us, which I thought was really fascinating.
It is. We have a lot of issues when we have a user with 3 cars because the user is just forwarding us whatever emails they get. And then it's kind of down to us to know, okay, so this is the email for car number 2 and so on. And yes, that is a headache right now for us. And if the agentic AI can actually immediately spot to these things, it's big. And one other thing there, and that speaks also with the problem in the market. A lot of our users, after they paid our service, a week, a month, 3 months, they are sending an email from a claims management company, which proves that actually they are signing with those claims management companies either before, either after, because the journey to sign with a claims management company is very, very, I don't know, confusing at least. They are telling you, okay, put here your detail to check something, and whenever you say approve, fundamentally you are giving them the power of attorney to do whatever they want. And I think that this is right now what we do. We are trying to spot this, and whenever we spot, we try to help them get out of the contract with the claims management companies. I think that this might be another element into the agentic AI where it can actually spot these situations, it can actually understand.
I was going to say, part of the thing that makes this really interesting is we are looking at agentic patterns that map to common situations. And what people need to remember is this is a really young field. It was only everyone's talking about agents. 9 months ago, most people hadn't even heard the word in terms of kind of technology. So that's how fast it's all moved. So we're still lacking the vocabulary to effectively communicate ideas and talk about these things. And that's another part of what we're trying to achieve via this agentic incubator, is to try and define that vocabulary and therefore the types of agentic implementation that you're going to apply to a problem. So we talked about the personal assistant one. We think that is a repeatable agentic pattern. Anywhere you've got that in the real life, there's an opportunity there to use kind of an agentic alternative. Likewise, what you just mentioned there, we are referring to that as the Sentinel at the moment. So anywhere where you've got a system that needs to be watched for unusual behavior or unusual patterns, and then that needs to be flagged back to a human that's in the loop or passed on to another agentic AI. That's another common theme that we're seeing a lot. So those agentic patterns working together is essentially the heart and soul of the ProveIt system. Or
that's interesting bit, because and you always wanted, of course, to have the technology to automate things, but also to have the human element in the loop and making sure that whatever we are communicating to our users, it's okay. What you say is fundamentally between the agentic AI doing the things then and the human, we insert the sentinel that actually will alleviate some of the effort from the human mirror, whatever, will catch a lot of the errors there. And that is an area where I heard quite a lot of it, but I never experienced it like real life and real hands-on, where you have multiple agents, each of them wearing different hats. But then asking them to interact in various ways. I mean, you mentioned, okay, you have a sentinel and you have somebody doing the do. And it makes sense. In real life also, you're doing exactly the same thing. You have somebody doing the do and somebody auditing or making sure that whatever you are doing, it's okay. So replicating this kind of concepts makes a lot of sense. And I'm smiling because probably you can replicate a 10,000 people company with various roles and various things if you want. And the technology probably is there, because if you can do it for 2, you can do it for 10,000. That's just a scale problem. And that's interesting.
the interesting thing about the whole space at the moment is, if you look back to the cloud era, you have microservices essentially that deal with certain things. So you've got an event hub, or you've got a database, or you've got a hosting engine. And the reason that we fixated on these microservices is so that we could deal with one problem and deal with it really well, and then stick those things together to make a big system that is very, very understandable, because we're looking at small parts working together, easy to maintain and debug and understand, and that kind of thing. And what we're seeing is, and what we believe is, the same will essentially be true in agentic AI. And the microservices, I suppose, in the cloud world will be discrete agents working in a multi-agent system in the agentic AI world. And the reason that that's important is because you need to be able to check that this thing over here is doing its job really well, and that you've got an observability layer there that allows you to verify that that thing is doing its job really very well, and you're able to bound it and govern the responsibility that it has. So you want to keep that quite granular if you want to be able to stay on top of it and understand it, which is why I think it's inevitable that you're going to have these kind of armies of agents working together to achieve something, because as humans, we have to be able to understand it all and put it together.
Yes, and you touched it very well in terms of our needs as humans, as a companies, to actually understand that. And I will throw another angle. You get the regulator, and especially to the financial service, you cannot say, you know what, I've answered this because the AI agent answered whatever. With FCA, you need to be able to show very clear repeatability and say, okay, this is what's happening in this particular scenario. This is what my system in general it's answering. So probably, and I know that they have lots of discussions with FCA and they are trying to explore, okay, how can we employ those agents or something, agentic AI, in a way that it's predictable? Because if I have the same entity and if I have, I don't know, I ask him or it 100 times exactly the same thing and I get 100 different answers, yes, if those answers fundamentally are the same, then it's okay. But if the answers are like, miles away apart, then you have a problem. And this is one of their main problems. So this is again coming back to, if you have this kind of very granular, and then you can wrap around it something overviewing that very granular in a way that it's producing a report, says, you know what, this entity actually is being used 1,000,000 times. This is its output, and this is the differences between.
So you've obviously you're working hard now to integrate AI into your processes, into your systems, into your business. You mentioned you're a regular user of ChatGPT. You're also involved in the incubator and working with us to kind of deploy agents and agentic systems into your operations. Have you got any advice or thoughts that's kind of worth considering if for business leaders out there who are just thinking about getting started in this kind of AI integration journey?
I think that probably the first thing that I would say is not a question of if, it's a question on when. I don't think that there will be many businesses, if any, that would be using at one moment the whole AI revolution. Like, you don't get many businesses not using a PC. You don't get probably many businesses not using the email. Exactly the same in the future. You'll not get many businesses not using this. So therefore, if any business will ask themselves, okay, should we be using this? Probably the right question is, should we be using now or in a year or in 5 years or whenever? And then for sure it's like in any new technology. And I think that again, it's if they believe that at one moment they will use this, the simple way, of course, is to have a simple use case, something, doesn't matter, something there, where they mirror the process there. So, okay, we have a process that works, I don't know, by standard technology, let's call it, or by a human being, and we leave that process in place, but then just to make sure that everything is safe, we ask the AI to mirror that process and try to compare the end result. Even if the end result will not get to the user, you do it. And I think that this is the safe, because probably, and this is one of the, from my perspective at least, whenever a new technology comes into place, you get a lot of initial costs. You get, okay, we need to deploy whatever, we need to do this and that and that. I think that with the agentic AI, the democratization of access to the quite powerful technology, it's already there. So I don't think that you need to do like a 3-month, 6-month setup process and you invest, I don't know, 6-figure, 7-figure budget to it and everything. So you can start small. You can start even right now if they want, because the technology is there. Again, if you have a human being and instead of doing whatever they do, they would ask as a very simple example, just ChatGPT and try to compare. Now you get it and you start it a little bit there. So I would encourage fundamentally everybody to start using it and start playing with it a little bit. Because again, I don't think that you get a cost barrier. The regulatory barrier, of course, various industries got it in different price. And of course, you need to make sure that whatever is there. But again, if you do it in a way that it for the start is not reaching the end user, then that might be a way for people to actually mitigate that risk. So if you don't have a lot of, again, financial barriers, regulator barriers, technology, it's already there. It's just the business appetite to start testing with it. The testing bit, and of course I'm biased because I set up the labs in Confused. I run the labs. Now I'm doing my own thing and so on. So I always be biased for trying new things. And I've seen a lot of times actually delivering very good results because in the end of the day, by trying something, the pros and cons, the limitations and all sorts of that thing. And knowing it's always better because it's either broadens your options, either limits your options. If you find out that actually there is no way for now to do that because you end up into whatever problems that you for sure cannot be solved, then say, okay, at least we don't have this problem, but then, or this option. But this is what I would say is, if they believe, and I think that's a fair assumption, that this AI will touch every business, then it's better to start sooner rather than later.
Really, that's really good advice. Yeah. So start small, pick a process that you can mirror with a human, and see where the experiment leads you. Yeah, absolutely. Adrian, it's been brilliant talking to you. I guess the last question really I want to ask is there what is the next thing that we should be talking about? What haven't we talked about today that we should be talking about that we haven't?
I think that we are not. I mean, we've been for what, 20, 30, 40 years, we've been so good of educating ourselves on how to tell a computer what to do, and says, you know what, I want you to add me A plus B and whatever. So you know exactly what you want from that PC. I think that it's a much more subtle revolution where we need to relearn, or we need to learn how to ask it what we should be asking. That kind of things where when you have a conversation between two human beings about a problem, you are bouncing off ideas, you are asking each other various questions. That hasn't been okay with the computer. We didn't have the technology to have a conversation where you get an equal in the other side of the room. It's not me telling the computer what to do. It's me asking the computer, what should I be doing? What should I be asking you? How should I go about this? This is my problem. What options I have? And I think that this, and talking about the adoption and everything, and this is the easiest if you want to start exploring with it, but I think that will be the key to master. And every company should master this. Every single human being, and at least employed in a company, should master this and should be doing this transition between, I am telling the computer what to do versus I'm asking the computer and I have a two-way conversation. And I've done an experiment. I mean, I'm using ChatGPT, and again, I'm probably 0.001% of of how much I should be using this AI in general, in personal life, in business life. And most of the times I am just typing. I say, okay, I have this problem. And I had a 1-hour conversation with ChatGPT, voice. So fundamentally, I turn it on the voice. I turn my my chair. So I was not looking to the PC. I was just kind of looking on the window. And then for an hour, I had a very decent conversation with ChatGPT about a subject where I was not an expert, but I was asking questions. It was delivering sub options and so on. So I was able to actually build an exploratory conversation with an, I don't know if I should say she, he, it, whatever is the ChatGPT stuff. And I think that this is the fundamental thing, and it's a fundamental shift in the whole paradigm, in the whole tech. Until now, the tech was very good of doing. If we knew exactly how to program it, it was very good of doing whatever we program it at. Right now, we need to shift our mindset into asking it and then try to have like a equal partner. And of course, for some things, to actually understand that it knows much more than we know. And that is, it's fundamental. And that I think that we need, everybody needs to learn that skill.
But Bill Gates was famous for saying that Agentic AI is going to have a bigger impact on the way we use computers since the invention of the GUI, since we went from the command line to the GUI. And I think about that, and I think, when we had a graphical user interface, the early versions of Windows and the like, it changed our relationship with the computer. It became something that you typed commands into. It went from something that you typed commands into to something that you interacted with, explored. And I think what you're saying there is kind of our relationship with computers needs to fundamentally change again. The way we think, our default way of thinking and using and interacting with a computer needs to be different. And I think some of us that have really invested in this technology and gone all in are finding this quite natural. That 1 hour conversation you talked about there, I've done sort of similar things, and the way that I use that technology as kind of a sounding board and a partner in crime and a brainstormer and a teacher is quite natural, but that's because I've already done that mental shift, or maybe I'm partway through doing that mental shift. And we have to remember that there's a lot of people that just not kind of got that yet. And so I think that's really insightful, and I think absolutely the way that we view computers and software is fundamentally going to change.
Adrian, where can people find out more about you, your channels, your TikTok dancing, your company? Where should people go?
So for sure, our website, provitweb.co.uk. LinkedIn, by all means, drop me a line. I'm Adrian Defta on LinkedIn. If you search for me, I'm always happy for a chat. Probably one thing that I haven't mentioned, and we are very open and very happy to help companies with this. So I'm conscious that lots of other companies are building into the financial sector, and at least some of them, if it's a B2C, they are struggling to reach a target audience or at least some audience. We solve that problem, and I'm very happy as long as they have a service that could benefit to my audience. I am happy to do this like for free and everything to explore. Okay, you have this service. I'm happy that. Of course, we can explore even deeper than that in terms of if they want to do whatever user research, if they want to start with Romanians in the UK for their service, by all means. And I think that this is one of the key elements, again, when we started, to try to early do the early validation, and we spoke about this and everything. And if anybody is building into, again, the financial sector, I wouldn't go in pretty much anything else but the financial bit. If they are building something there and they are struggling, by all means, reach out to me. Again, on LinkedIn, I am Adrian Defta. Drop me a line and I'm always replying there. And I'm happy to facilitate this kind of access to an extent, of course, to our audience for user research and for early validations by all means. And of course, even after that, if you have an established product, if it's a service that it's useful for our users, for sure we are interested in at least try to see if it's any interest there. But TikTok, yeah, of course, I have the ProveIt AI right now channel. It's a pretty new channel because 2 months ago or 1 month ago or something like that, TikTok decided that they don't like our channel anymore, and this is the hard learning where, we've done. We fundamentally we let in the comments we commented with our WhatsApp number, and they decided that that's against their policy, and they shut it off the channel. Not very nice, but this allowed us to start a new channel, and it's there and it's performing.
The algorithm.
Talking about the learnings from a startup and the different problems that you can.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I'll put all those in the notes as well. Adrian, thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. And ProveIt is a fantastic organization, great solution, doing loads and loads of great work with a very underserved audience. So it's fantastic to be a part of that as well. In our small way, we very much look forward to watching it grow, watching it blossom.